when we're winterizing the system, we get the compressor as close to the filter station as we can and figure out where the flow meter is. We want to hook in after the flow meter so that we're not pushing air through that while we're blowing the system out. So we hook a pressure regulating valve onto the compressor, roll a hose out, hook into that point that we've identified, and then once we have that, go around, open up all the flush valves at the flush end, sub-main flushes if they're on a system, and get all those opened up, open up 2 to 3 zone valves, kind of depending on how they're sized. Typically we blow about 30 acres at a time with the compressor we use. Pull an air vent off at the end of the main line so we can blow that out as well, get that water out before we push it through the zone, and then come back, start the compressor, fire it up, and push air through the system. So this is the pressure regulating valve that we use to control how much pressure the air we're putting through the system. It's set to 30 psi, which is about what we would typically run for water pressure too. So air pressure, water pressure, same thing. If we get too high pressure going through the system, we could break a pipe or burst the tape. So we've got to have that in place so that we're protecting the system, making sure that we're not getting too high pressure going through it. This is just the fitting to hook onto the fire hose, the adapter. So on this particular system, this is the clean water line coming out of the filters. The flow meter is just right inside of the wall of the shed there. So this is going to be the best place for me to hook in to blow zones of the system out. Open this banjo valve, right in our adapter for our hose here. And once we get that hooked up, zones opened up, we'll fire the compressor up and start pushing air. Blow the system out, it's just a fire hose. It's rated for plenty of pressure, more pressure than what the PVC will handle. So we found it's the easiest to work with as far as maneuverability and safety wise. So we just get those, hook them into the system to the compressor, and use that to push the air through the system. Alright, so now that we've got our hoses hooked up, the next step is to go out and open the system up and get all the flush valves, sub-main flushes, and a couple of zone valves opened up so that when we fire that compressor up, that air has someplace to go and we're not overpressuring the pipe right away. So I'll hop on the four-wheeler and run around and get some of that opened up, and we'll come back and start moving some air. Some flush valves out in the field opened up and 3 zone valves. So we'll go ahead and fire the compressor up, let it warm up. It's a little bit cooler today, so it'll take a little bit longer for it to warm up. But once it goes through that cycle, we'll slowly crack this valve open to start pushing air out to the system and get the water purged out of the line. So after we fire the compressor up, let it go through its warm-up cycle, we're ready to start pushing air. I slowly open this ball valve so that we don't risk hammering anything. That is probably one of the bigger concerns with doing this, is just making sure that we don't ever spike our pressure quickly anywhere. So slowly open this. There's a pressure gauge built in here, so we watch that. And when I'm flushing the main line out to start with, typically don't like to go above 20 to 25 psi, just again to help keep that pressure down and make sure that we don't ever hammer anything. So once that pressure starts to drop, keep opening the valve until you have it wide open, and then once you get to that point, typically your main line's done and you can go out, start cycling through your valves, your zones, and flushing those through. We're done blowing out the system. So now on this particular system, we've got about 1,000 feet of mainline dirty water that comes from the pond and comes into the filtration system here. So we'll go on ahead and switch our plumbing around, get hooked in on the opposite side of the flow meter. In this particular case, we'll plumb into this 2-inch banjo valve here, and then we'll use that to push air backwards through that main line back to the pond. So that's how we're going to blow the main line out on this particular system. To get the small components inside of the filter station winterized as well. And if there's a fertilizer pump, there's this check valve that's on top of the pump. We'll disconnect those unions, dump the water out of that, and put it back in place. On the bottom of the pump housing, there's a drain plug. Pull that off and drain the water out of the pumps. While you've got that apart, the hoses that connect into the system, a lot of times we'll have a ball valve to isolate that from the system, so it doesn't hurt to kind of open and close those a few times. So if there's any water trapped in the body of the valve, then we get that drained out as well. There's this command filter, again, that can hold water, so we need to take that loose and dump any water that's in that. Dump that out. Back flush check valve. Same thing with that as with the 1-inch ball valves, kind of cycle that a few times, get any water drained out of that. And finally, the pressure transducers that we have tied into the controller to kind of monitor the pressure of the system. We need to undo the hoses to that and drain them out so that there's no water sitting in these transducers over winter. That should be everything. The filters should have been drained while you were blowing air through the system. So everything should be good to go then. For this process, we use the same fire hose and everything, just kind of unhook it from where we're tied in to blow the system out and move it however we need to tie into our other spot. Just a little bit different adapter here, but same basic concept. Hook it in, hook the fire hose up, and then turn the compressor on and blow air backwards to the pond.
So to blow out the main line side of your pipe, the first thing you're going to want to do is take this 2-inch air vent off that goes right here on the main line side. Most of our systems will have this 2-inch air vent on the main line side, so that's how you'll be able to identify which side of the pipe's main line. But if you don't have a 2-inch, you can always look at the valve here, and whichever way the arrow is coming from is the main line side. So in this case, the arrow on the valve is pointed this way, so you know this is the main line side of the pipe. And so you'll put a banjo valve in place of your 2-inch air vent and open that up. Once you get a good stream of water shooting out, eventually it'll stop and it'll just be a stream of mist basically, and that's how you know the water is completely out of the pipe. I'm going to be showing you guys how to blow out any pipe from your chem valve to your wellhead. We'll take this plug out of the chem valve here just to make sure there's no water sitting in there, and there's nothing in there. But if your well did happen to be a little ways from your container and the chem valve here, hook your pressure line up to a port on your chem valve or before the neck here. You know, it could be this 1-inch port here, or in this case we've got this 2-inch port up here. And then on most wellheads, there's a port like this that once you hook the air up and start blowing the water, any water that's in the pipe will shoot out your little port here. Then you won't have any water in your line.